Table for One, Episode 15, Pandemic Legacy. Hey everybody, welcome back to Table for One. This is Episode 15, and this week we are on Part 2 of our Pandemic duology, and we're talking about Pandemic Legacy this time around. So, this is Anthony, once again, and Jason.
Yo, peoples, what's up?
All right, so we're back with more Pandemic. So if you don't like Pandemic and you tuned out last week, guess what? There's more.
Pandemic for your face.
Happy holidays. Pandemic. But this week we're going to talk about just one Pandemic game, the biggest Pandemic game, the number one game of all time, according to Board Game Geek, and that's Pandemic Legacy. So how we're going to do this, we're going to break the episode in half. We're going to talk about kind of the idea behind it and the base mechanics and, just kind of an overview and how it runs and, our basic introduction stuff. And then I'll put up a big, loud spoiler wall. We'll remind you and tell you to turn it off if you've either not played yet or haven't finished it. And then we will just spoil the heck out of the game. So, fair warning, if you haven't played yet and you want to later, this will be a very short episode for you. Everybody else, have at it. All right, so Pandemic Legacy. This is one of the, it's one of the biggest game releases, period, in the last couple of years. It was, Z-Man through a lot of fanfare, released this thing at Ascent last year, so it's been out for a little over a year now, and it is the Rob Daviau Legacy edition of Matt Leacock's game. So they're both designers on this, and when you start the game, it is Pandemic. That's, it's base Pandemic. There's no real differences. But when you look through the rule book, you will see a lot of holes that you're going to have to fill as you go along. Those are different rules that you're going to be adding to the game and different adaptations and changes that will be made depending on a variety of things. Some of them are story-based, where you're going to see the same things as everybody else. Some other things might even be specific to your playthrough, depending on decisions you make and things that happen in certain places. And that's one of the hallmarks of this legacy system, especially as kind of slapped on over existing games, is that there's a through line, there's a narrative of sorts, but then there's also this feeling that you own your own game. Every single playthrough of Pandemic Legacy is going to be different, and it's going to be unique to you and your group. So, the game is designed for 2 to 4 players. You really do need 4 characters out there. You don't need it to follow the rules, but you'd need it. So my playthrough, I played with 2 people, and we each played 2. So it definitely added something to the game. And then as you go through the game, you're going to play different months. There's obviously 12 months in the year. And each time you're going to have 2 opportunities to beat that month. So if you lose the first time, you play the month again, which basically just means you make no changes to the board other than the stuff you do each game, and you try again. If you lose again, you just move on to the next month. So the most possible games of this you could play is 24, but nobody's actually going to get to 24 because the game has ways of making it easier if you lose a lot, harder if you win a lot. Kind of balances itself out over time. So it's a very unique experience, even though it is base Pandemic to start. I really liked that. I thought it was pretty cool. It was a good way to introduce people to the game and make sure everybody understood the rules and we're all on the same page before diving into all the cool different stuff that got thrown at you as the game went along. One of the other major hallmarks of the legacy format here, especially for Pandemic, is that each of the characters will evolve and change over time. So you're going to be able to pick up different abilities as you kind of level up throughout the game. You're going to get different scars that impact you based on certain events that might happen on the board. And all of these things will impact that character for every future game you play, which is a very cool idea. It makes each character feel unique. It's not just a special power on a card. It's this person that you've built, and it sometimes has relationships with other people that other people have built. Now, we'll get into the solo ability and the solo nature of Pandemic Legacy in general a little later on, but one of the major things that I really loved about this game, and a lot of people love about this game, is the interaction. So you do have these characters that you feel are kind of your own, and they interact with other people's characters that are kind of their own, and that is a big part of it. But at the same time, the narrative is, for all intents and purposes, a little, it's a through line. There are things that are going to happen each time, in some form or another. So it does feel like, I don't know, it kind of feels like that one of those episodes of, season of a great TV show where you're going through and you're experiencing it the way you would, but maybe if you talk to someone else, they experienced different things and got something else out of it.
Yeah, it's like 24. Dude, 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 dude. You don't remember that show, do you, man?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I played this with 3 of my friends, and we basically played. We took 3 nights with it, so it was like 5 games, 4 games, 5 games, however many games we ended up playing. But we did it in 3 nights. We just did not want to stop. We just, we got to know what happens next. We got to know what happens next. Oh my God, we let Kolkata die in flames. We're too tired. We have to put it away and do something else because we just screwed that up. But yeah, it was on the narrative gives it that propulsive quality. I think we talked a little bit about that with like Arkham Horror, the card game, or Lord of the Rings card game. Like, when those games that have narrative, and the narrative is what really gets you wanting to play over and over and over again. You want to know what happens. I've seen some criticisms of this game, which this game is open to a lot of criticisms because when you rock it up to number 1 like that, you're going to, attract some trolls. The story is predictable. I saw what happened coming a mile away and blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. The story's predictable. We'll talk about it behind the spoiler wall. I agree with that, but that doesn't make it bad. I mean, a lot of my favorite stories are completely predictable. Like, I don't care. Like, it's a part of a greater story because of how good it was, how well it was done. And that's what this is. Like, and it's a little bit predictable. It's a little bit, whatever. It's still Pandemic. Pandemic has that issue of being a little bit abstract. But like Anthony was saying, you get attached to your characters. It builds that in, and the narrative is well executed enough where it's just boom. Like I got to play this over and over and over again.
Yeah, I get a little frustrated with people who go on about predictability because you can kind of apply that to anything. Like, I don't think surprise makes a narrative good. Suspense makes a narrative good. Keeping people like, how is it going to happen? What is the breakdown going to be? I've recently finished watching the first season of Westworld, for example, and that's a show that I feel like, for me personally, my experience with it was like episode 3, I kind of figured out all the twists, which doesn't usually happen to me. That's not the kind of person I am. I don't try to pick up a show apart, but I felt like I did. And at the end of the season, it's like, I was kind of right for most of these things. But it didn't bother me. I didn't get upset like, it was so predictable, because it was so suspenseful. Like, how did it unfolded, how it kind of propelled itself forward. And that was the experience I had with Pandemic Legacy, is sometimes some of the twists in here were like, okay, yeah, I could see that. Other things a little less so. But it was how it worked and how it applied to our characters, and knowing for a fact that it was different for everybody else. How these things unfolded was not going to be the same for everybody else, because certain things depended on how you played a certain game. So that didn't bother me at all, and as somebody who is a lover of fiction and narrative, originally a creative writer, that's my background. And I love this idea of injecting narrative, but not just narrative, this finite personal narrative with which you build a relationship into a game is just so cool. And I wish there were more games that did it successfully, and it's such a new idea that it's still evolving. And we still really only have one designer who's pulled it off, but it's just, to me, it deserves that kind of position, up above a lot of other games. Is it like traditional games? I think it's a different conversation to have, because it really is its own experience, but it is a fantastic experience.
I mean, we could kind of open that can a little bit. Like, does it deserve to be number 1 on Board Game Geek?
It's such a hard question, because I think what it is, and having played it, we both played it, it's the best gaming experience I've ever had. But to be fair to other games, You don't sit and play any other game in your collection, 14 times or however many times you played in 3 nights. Like, you're never going to forget that, probably. You're never going to forget those 3 nights and what you went through and how this game unfolded. And that's part of what pushes a game up that high. Now, to be fair, the same thing happens with almost anything else. Some of the most popular books of all time are because when people read them, they read them in college and formative years. Some of the most popular movies of all time, it's because people have such strong nostalgia for the time it came out. Doesn't mean that, are they the best? Maybe, maybe not, but they're at the top of those lists because of the experience people had when they interacted with it. And I think that's what we're getting with Pandemic Legacy. I don't know if it's the best game ever made. It's certainly one of the most impressive pieces of gaming I've ever experienced. But from in a lot of metrics, yes. And then in a handful of metrics, no. The trolls who get angry and try to downvote it, that's frustrating. Like, who cares that much? But at the same time, it's hard to argue that it's one of the best games ever made.
It says a lot that we're comparing this game to TV and books and not other games. So is Scythe the best game of the year, or best game, deserves to be there? How does it compare to Terra Mystica, which is a game that inspired Scythe? We're comparing, kind of apples to apples over there. Or Puerto Rico and, Agricola, these kind of Euros that interact with one another. Base Pandemic and other cooperative games, they compare. Pandemic Legacy, there are no other apples to compare it to within the gaming world yet. In order to have good comparisons, we have to compare it to these other things, which is really, that says a lot. That says, we're really pushing board gaming into a whole different realm of just, with different ways that we can think about and relate to a board game, So yes, I mean, in that sense, this game is at least a top 10 game of all time, because it does push that boundary. It does give that experience. You said it was the best gaming experience that you've ever had. It is up there with mine, along with Time Stories, which does very similar things. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll talk about Time Stories kind of down the line. But that sense of narrative, that sense of propulsion, yes, at least top 10. However, it does say a lot that even though I rated it 10, played it, I enjoyed it, I do not own this game. I don't need to. And for a game to let me get away with not owning it, it says something too. There's that. I played my friend's copy, and I'd like to play it again, but it's $60 freaking dollars, and I'm not going to pay $60 freaking dollars to read the same book. Or even though I might enjoy the book, really, that has that going for it. I could read my favorite books over and over again, but I'm not going to pay another $60 to do that. I think, when I really look at Pandemic, they really could have done it differently. Like, they could have taken the base Pandemic board, given you this, kind of a clear wrapper or something, or clear plastic pane, put it over there, gave you renewable pieces, really lowered the cost, really lowered that barrier of entry, and done the same thing. The fact that it's its own game and it's this disposable game, yes, I know it almost needed to be that in order to create that sense of tension. But, I don't own it, and I'm not going to own it. And if it's the best game of all time, shouldn't I want to own it? So I'm still kind of sorting out my own thoughts about that, but I do get that perspective that other people have, that they want to knock it down a little bit.
Yeah, that's the tough part, I think. And if you're the person who paid for it, for the group, right, you're happy to have it, especially when it's over. You have that completed piece, and you maybe pull it out and you look at it. It's a nice souvenir to have. Everybody was part of that experience. It was absolutely worth the money initially. But if you're not, you do kind of get stuck in that situation of, well, this was an amazing game experience, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite games ever, but why would I go buy it when I've already finished it? It's hard to compare it to other experiences for that reason, because it's not like a TV show you could sit down and rewatch, obviously, as many times as you want. You're not taking the DVD out of the machine and breaking it in half when you finish the show. But at the same time, you do go to movies and spend $20 a person to watch something that maybe isn't that good, let alone one of the best movies of all time. So there's a lot of different comparisons I think you can make, and they all have good points. In the end, you basically have a new medium. You have an interactive, destructible, narrative-based game. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's different than anything else that's come before, so it's hard to say one way or the other, where it should fall. I get both sides of the argument. I get a little annoyed at people who are against it strictly because it's destructible. Just don't buy it then. But at the same time, does it deserve to be, the one game everybody sees if they bother to go look at the top list? I don't know. I guess time will tell. I think as we get season 2 and possibly beyond, that's a conversation that's going to continue to evolve.
I think if you took the top 20 games as they're constituted right now, forget Through the Ages and Through the Ages New Edition, they're both being entered there. Let's just forget that for a second. But if you took them all and you re-voted and you asked people to re-rate their games, would some of those other games kind of leap ahead of Pandemic Legacy? That is to say, is Pandemic Legacy status number 1 just kind of like, the new hotness, Cult of the New type stuff? Like if you reset people's votes, would another game pop up there? Would Through the Ages, would Twilight Struggle, would Mage Knight, or whatever these other games, these top 20 games? I'm not sure. To me, I think they would, because that destructible game mentality really takes a lot. It's very challenging, and and the fact that it kind of asks the consumer to just kind of keep on pouring money into it if you want to play it again. And, these are drawbacks. I really think that they could have done this a little bit of a different way, or maybe kind of lowered, imagine if they kind of released this pack of, okay, here's some new components that you can play it again without having to buy the whole freaking thing with all those pieces and all those whatever. I would actually kind of, okay, you guys really want us to play this over and over again, and you're willing to kind of sell us this pack at a discounted rate. Without having to, how many freaking pawns do I need? How many copies of the board do I need? That would help that a little bit. They're not doing that. And, so there's a little bit of disjunction for me in terms of saying this is the best game of all time, but it clearly belongs at least in that conversation.
Yeah. And I think that's a conversation we're going to keep having for years, as long as they're releasing seasons of it. And, there's a lot of arguments to be made. I think, your top 20 exercise is a good one, because even now, as we talk about it, looking at this list, I'm like, yeah, I'd probably rearrange these a little bit. Just based on what I'd want to play. Like if we have a game experience that I've completed that I have no interest in going back and playing again, does it deserve to be ranked over another game that I am eager to play every other week? Maybe not, so it's almost worth coming back to this conversation. We have season 2 coming next fall. This will certainly be something that pops up again, especially if season 2 rises in those rankings too. And then we have 2 legacy games in the top 10 or top 20. People are going to be all riled up. So definitely.
So how does it play as a solo?
I haven't done it. It's so having played with 2 instead of the full 4, I can say that how we did it was just each person played with 2 characters. Obviously, nothing else changes in the game. It's the same way you would play base Pandemic if you're playing with 2 people. And it played great. No difference. Some people warned us against it, and it was fine. I had a lot of fun. I don't feel like we missed anything. Maybe you don't get that one-on-one feeling with your character, but I don't know that really changed much for us. I think as a solo, you're going to have to be doing all 4 of those characters, and so it's going to even further abstract you from each of them. You're not going to get that feeling of like these people matter. It's more of just managing different abilities and trying to min-max where you place those stickers and how you upgrade and downgrade certain characters. But it's everything else is going to run the same. And I've seen people warn against it, but I don't see what the problem would be other than the fact that it's $60-$70 for a one run solo game.
Yeah, I think the because I see this question asked a fair amount in like Facebook groups or the One Player Guild. Is this game worth playing solo? It made the top 100 people's choice on the One Player Guild, so obviously people are playing it solo. And that's the what people are having an issue with is that there are these narrative moments that you want to share. You know, so why are some of the most popular shows popular? Why was Lost, which is probably the first big show that people were really talking about, why was that popular? It was because not just because it was an awesome show, but you immediately went to some internet chat room, you went to your AIM, you know, harkening back there, or you went to work and you talked about it and you shared it, and or even if you just watched it at the time, you called your friend and it's like, wow, did you see that? Oh my goodness, the numbers, what do they mean? And with Pandemic Legacy, you can't just do that. Like you have to do it with a person that's there, you know. So Anthony was saying like each version of Pandemic Legacy is different. You can't play a solo version of Pandemic Legacy, have something awesome happen, and then call somebody and expect them to share that same awesome experience. They had a different awesome experience, or maybe their experience wasn't so awesome. It's very localized to you. So on that level, I could see it being a little bit of a difficult solo, because that, you know, it's just better when it's shared. However, it's still good. You know, if you're the only person in the world that reads Harry Potter, that reads, you know, something, you know, really awesome piece of literature. Maybe people don't agree Harry Potter is awesome literature, but you're wrong. I think it is. You know, if you're the only person that reads, you're still gonna enjoy it. You're still gonna like it. You're still gonna get caught, and you know, it's not gonna be as resoundingly awesome as if you're not gonna be able to talk about it with anybody. Even people who've played Pandemic Legacy, it's gonna be difficult to really have them share your excitement for it. But it's still, if you like narrative experience, if you like that imaginative journey of getting attached to one or more characters and having them do their thing, then yes, this is I didn't play it solo, but I can extrapolate, and I think that it would be a really great experience. And I almost want to just dive into season 2 solo just to confirm that. But I can't imagine not enjoying a solo version of a really good story.
Yeah, I mean, if the only thing missing is the social aspect of sharing the story with other people, there are plenty of, like you said, TV shows, books, movies, whatever, that I've watched or read on my own that I really wanted to share with people, but I couldn't. Game of Thrones is a perfect example because I read the books years and years ago, and when those shows were coming out, I was like, yeah, that thing happened in season 2. And then I couldn't talk about it because I couldn't remember what they knew and didn't know. The number of people who had read those books at that point in time was much smaller. So it was an experience where I couldn't share that with other people, and that was having the exact same narrative. Now imagine that changing that a little bit and having every chapter of the book being slightly different depending on what copy you have. But at the same time, it doesn't make it any less good. It just, if you define how good something is by how many other people saw it and agree with you, then maybe this wouldn't be the most fun for you. But if you just enjoy a good story, well worth it.
If I get some money, if I win the cool stuff contest on Dice Tower, I may just do it. I may just, spend the $60. Maybe that's a little bit more of a barrier for me than, it would be for other people or whatever it is. But, it's a good story. I'm reading the Dresden Files again. I don't have anybody to talk about the Dresden Files with, but I'm reading them again, and they're excellent. And I'm really enjoying myself. So Pandemic Legacy, I guess, would be on that level of, it's not high literature, but it's that fast fantasy, action-oriented, just fun,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and this is probably a separate podcast, but I would totally talk about the Dresden Files. Just saying.
Well, when the Dresden Files cooperative card game comes out, we could just have, pop that.
I know. I totally missed that on Kickstarter. I will totally track down a copy.
Sucker! Got mine coming. So I guess let's pop on a spoiler wall. We're kind of running short on time, but we would like to kind of especially for people who have seen Pandemic Legacy and they don't have a lot of seen it, treating it like a movie. Who play Pandemic Legacy, but they don't get a lot of conversation about what happened. Here's a little bit of us kind of chatting about our experiences of it. Hopefully, you can kind of resonate and get something out of it yourself.
It's one of those things that I think the Dice Tower just did this like last month, and that's how long it took them because they were waiting for both of them to finish it up. And that's the challenge of Pandemic Legacy, is finding people who've actually finished it in a group with nobody else who is waiting to finish it that you can talk to about it. That's very hard. So
yeah.
Even 14 months after it came out, that's hard to find. So if you're out there, we feel you. We felt your pain. That's why we're chatting Pandemic Legacy today.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hit the spoiler wall. Spoiler wall. Spoiler wall. Woo! Woo!
I was gonna put in a sound effect, but I don't think I need to now.
Spoilers.
That means time to take your headphones off. So everybody's still here. Spoilers. So we mentioned the game is pretty much pandemic to start. That changes in about 5 minutes, right? I think it's during that first game, right, where that first disease kind of mutates and...
Yeah, the coda comes out and now becomes uncurable, I think.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things is that it's going to be a different disease for every play, just because it depends on... I can't remember the exact circumstances. It's the first one you cure, the last one you cure, whatever it is.
It's the one with the most cubes in the board, I think, is the violent strain rule.
There you go. So it's going to be different for everybody. Ours was, in my game, it was the yellow, South America.
Yellow fever.
Yep.
Yep. We had influenza on our board.
Nice. North America. It's tough. So that's the first thing that changes. And then everything kind of just rapidly shifts from there. You start unlocking new mechanics. You get access to, new character abilities pretty quickly. The quarantine ability becomes pretty much a necessity in the game. I'd say, the start of the second month almost immediately because of the uncurable disease.
And then, the next thing that happens is, the thing where people say, oh, this is so predictable, all of a sudden people that are infected with the coda become zombies. They call them the Faded, but they're zombies. Come on.
Yeah. No, you get little translucent dudes who look like zombies. So.
Oh, yeah. And they follow very similar rules. Like if there's 3 of them in an area, they blow up and they spread to the neighboring cities. Only except, as opposed to the other diseases, they infect the next city over. So they get this little green sticker, which means, nothing but Faded are going to come out, which means they can spread to other parts of the board. So it creates that huge tension of like, oh, man, Istanbul is in danger of becoming a Faded city. That's not in the blue area. Or, Beijing, oh, my goodness, Tokyo fell and Beijing's next. That kind of thing. I know Tokyo and Beijing are not connected. I just wanted to see if you were paying attention, people.
You all failed. All of you. Including me.
And then, so the game so at that point, the game settles in. You're doing these missions now. So that's where the 24-ness comes in, where, each month is a different mission. Like you're recovering a person or you're recovering documents or whatever it is, dealing with these Faded. New characters are coming in. I think the operations expert comes in with the research stations and also military stations. So that is another little wrinkle. So at this point, so the military has tasked you to contain the Faded. They're giving you all this information about, we got to stop this and whatever. You find out that the military has been using you to build the military infrastructure around the world. And that, once you find out the truth, so to speak, the government turns against you. And one of your members is a traitor, and you end up having to kill one of your own characters. And in a group, that landed hard because one of the players there just built up their characters so much, and then he had to rip them in half, and it was so sad. So as a solo player, is that going to have the same impact? Meh.
Not at all. No.
Not at all, because like you said, you're going to be multi-handing, and you're not going to have that particular connection with a single character. So that's something we couldn't say in the non-spoiler cast. This is something that the solo gamer really loses out on. You're gonna tear up a character, but it's like, all right, I got a couple others, and I'm gonna throw them right here. And when you're single player and you're single handing it with a bunch of other players, that's when you really it kicks you in the nads a little bit. So you missed that. So we definitely have to put it out there that the solo gamer is going to miss something.
Yeah, and I think even with fewer than 4 players, you might miss that a little bit. Like with 2, we're playing 2 characters each. I don't think I would feel quite as gutted losing one of the 2 characters I'm playing. But yeah, 1 of 4, I don't. Unless that happens to be the one you've tanked up. But if you're like me and a lot of other solo players, you're min-maxing each of those characters, so they're going to be pretty even across the board. You're probably not going to care. It's going to be annoying. It's not going to be devastating.
Yeah. So once that happens, it becomes a race to deconstruct all the military bases that you put up. You actually get a goal to destroy a bunch of military bases or destroy a certain amount of them. I forget exactly how it works. And then the very last mission is to basically just destroy all the military and or whatever. I forget exactly what you're supposed to do. It's been such a long time, and I can't replay it, so I don't really know. And I can't find the stuff online that kind of breaks down the plot. All right, it's buried in there somewhere. But what I do remember is the mechanic. The mechanic was that really you kind of ignore the rest of the diseases. You make sure you treat them so that they don't like go crazy. But you're playing these church cards, and you're going to all these places. By then, your cards have built up these special powers that you've actually altered the cards themselves for them to have special powers. You're using those powers like over and over and over again to get that through that search track. I think you're playing the search function. Like you have to do it like 24 times or something like that, and it's with sets and everything. So it really is like they really did a good job making that end exciting. And when we finally accomplished the last search, I could not help it. I had to go into my iPod and start playing the A-Team theme song. And we played the rest of the game playing that theme song and just feeling really, really excited and really good about ourselves.
That's fantastic. That's the hallmark of a great experience is when everybody has to jump up and cheer at the end. You need a soundtrack.
I cannot hear the A-Team theme song, and I'm dating myself, obviously. I'm a little bit older than maybe some of our listeners. Some of our listeners will play, whatever big suspense thing that they grew up with. But yeah, we were so excited. We were grinning from ear to ear. We didn't care that, there was some mechanical funkiness to it. We didn't care that, this is a predictable story or whatever. It was so well done. And the last game was interesting enough, different enough, where it really like, okay, you're doing something different, and now this is it. And we were so happy with it.
I don't think it's possible to get through all of this game, and I think it's part of too with the legacy system. If you finish it, you must like it, because why would you power through 15 to 20 games if you're not having fun? I think it's part of the problem people are having with Seafall right now.
Yeah, but it could have ended with a little whimper. Like it could have ended with, you had these 2 big twists, and it could have just been a regular game of Pandemic. And to be honest with you, some of the months were just do this other side mission. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, we're this way so far. So a couple of months was like, but the narrative really picked up propulsion after that traitor hit, and every game after that was different. And they really did a good job of making the last month really good. Ask anybody who was a fan of Lost. That last episode sucked. It was so unsatisfying. I don't know if you were a fan of Lost, but I kind of wasn't. I went, I flew in after the fact, and I'm looking at that last episode going, wow, that's why people were upset.
I never finished it, honestly. I remember loved season 1, watched season 2, said, what the heck is this, and dropped off. And then I think it went up and then down again, and then that ending, and I was like, man, I'm never gonna finish this. So.
Yeah, no reason to keep on going. You ever played Mass Effect?
I have, but I did not finish it. But I know it
You
was a
didn't
similar
finish it?
experience. Yeah.
Similar experience where like the ending was just, what the hell is this? This is garbage. I remember playing it and I saw it before the extended cut ending, and the original like crappy ending. It's like, what is going? This was so good and this was ended so horribly. Thank goodness this game gave me that good ending. I was so happy with the way it ended. So satisfying. It put together everything it took advantage of all those little cards you changed. That's what you want an ending to do, right? You don't want it to just negate the things that came before. You don't want it to introduce a new element that ignores the 11/12ths of what came before. It really took what you did and took advantage of it, and so good.
Yeah, and that, friends, is why it's number one on Board Game Geek, because anybody who finished it had a pretty similar experience.
And they can't defend it because that means they're spoiling it.
I think is one of the big problems, because people who've not played it are much quicker to be like, oh, this is stupid, you're ripping up cards, I'm never going to play this, that's dumb. It's like, we can't go tell those people, but you should, because then this and this and this happens. And they're like, well, now why would I play it?
Yeah. So I think we've gone on long enough. I think we've shared, unless you have something else that you want to share.
No, I think that's I think we've covered enough pandemic for the holiday break for everybody. Yeah, we've done all the pandemics. Well, until the next one, that is. This is 3 major pandemic releases in the last 13 months. So I can't imagine we're done yet, especially since Asmodee got their hands on this now. So. Oh
yeah, and we also have the dice game, which we'll save that for down the road.
Oh, that's right. We didn't even do the dice game.
We didn't even do the dice game. Well, the expansion just came out, and neither of us have played it, so let's just save it for when we get the expansion on the table.
Yeah, no, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, that's Pandemic Legacy, and it's only season 1, so I think we've got about 9-10 months until season 2 hits, and then we will certainly be talking about that as well. But for this episode, that's going to be everything. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up our pandemic 2-part series. And, once again, if you are interested in, joining the conversation, having a chat about Pandemic or Pandemic Legacy or any of these games, hit us up on Board Game Geek, Guild 1735. We are also on Facebook. Look for Board Gamers Anonymous, or Twitter, BGA Podcast. And, of course, BoardGamersAnonymous.com, where all of these episodes are posted. You come and comment and, ask questions or whatever. Tell us, you have a different experience or thoughts. We love all that stuff. If you have not yet, please subscribe on iTunes or the Google Play Store, and leave us a quick review and a comment. We just love your feedback, but it also helps other people find the podcast, which is pretty cool. Get the word out there about all these solo games. But for this week, that's going to be everything. And for this year, that's gonna go ahead and wrap us up. So, thank you. If you've been with us from the start, thank you for listening. If you've just joined recently, thank you for hopping on. We really appreciate it. Appreciate your feedback and all the listens, and really just hope you're getting a lot out of the show and having fun solo gaming over the holidays. But for everybody here until the end of the year, which is just a couple days, have a great rest of 2016, and we'll catch you next year. That is everything, and we will save you a seat at this table for one.
Happy holidays, everybody.